So the next thing I want to talk about is go right to another Elon Musk tweet. He recently reacted to this is a well-known thing if you're paying attention. The population concerns in South Korea has the lowest birth rate of any nation. Essentially, very soon they will lose half their population because they're just not having enough children. Elon Musk writes, South Korea is currently tracking to lose about half its population, roughly every generation. And this is true. For various reasons, the birth rate is very low in South Korea, but this is true of most nations that become industrialized and become first world nations. The birth rate tends to go down. There are a lot of reasons for it, family planning, birth control. They're all much more widely available the richer your country gets. As women enter the workforce, a lot of them put off having families. Their priorities lie elsewhere,
I,
which
I want to see the trend. Like,
you want to see the trend?
yeah, like how much has it changed
Oh, okay.
versus other countries? That's kind of because I mean, Japan probably has this. I'm
Japan has
assuming
this
Japan
issue too. Yeah.
has the same issue. Is there anything special about South Korea?
So this shows here that you see a general decline with all first world nations. Even Mexico. In 1970, Mexico had a birth rate of almost 7, and
Yeah.
now it's down to 2. Japan is 1.5, it looks like. South Korea is 0.97. The
It looks like
US
Japan
is,
hasn't changed much.
no, it's been pretty low for a long time. The USA and China are about, what is this, like 1.7, something like that?
Yeah.
So this is pretty typical as women enter the workforce, healthcare, contraceptives, or birth control, they're just more available. Not all people are that interested in having children. And when people are given the option and get to express that choice, it seems that they express choice in a percentage that is not meeting replacement population, replacement birth rate. What is the solution? I don't have any solutions, but it is something to talk about. And
Well, you got to fix the family first. I
I
think.
think, yeah, I think the two of us definitely are on the side of, reinvigorating a sense and of placing a value in the traditional family. But how you go about doing that, I'm not quite sure, because there's so many aspects of modern society just seem to push against the traditional family structure, right?
Have you
That
ever seen parents bragging about their kids on Instagram? Or I don't know. It is
I have.
okay.
My friends that
So
have
I guess
kids post them.
it's hard. I mean, I don't know. Having a kid is not as showy as getting a fancy car or going to some exotic location, I guess. It's not as doesn't make for as good photos.
Yeah, and a lot of society, what you consume in media, very little of it tells you that having children is going to be fulfilling. It's going to be, it's going to be a net positive in your life. Not much of it tries to put that message into you, but you have a lot of media that tells you, well, going to the Maldives will make you fulfilled. Going to EDC, right? Getting this new materialistic thing, buying the new car, right? Having a fancy apartment. And
Although
so is it any
typically,
wonder that people strive for those things?
I think if you talk to any parents, though, they will. I mean, I think
Yeah, they'll
I've
say
heard.
they're fulfilled, but
Yeah,
that's not the message you get in media.
right.
You have to know parents and talk to them, have deep conversations with them about this very topic. And I don't think that happens a lot.
Hmm.
And if we're being charitable, not everybody is avoiding children because they're hedonists and selfish and they just want to live life. They just want to be perpetually young. And that's not everybody's motivation. Some people just feel like they're not in a financial position to really have kids, and kids are expensive. They're pretty expensive. So they just don't feel they're in the position to do that. So not
Man,
everybody is just like
yeah,
selfish.
that's pretty charitable these days, though. I think.
I think so. I think most people can
Yeah.
afford kids, and so if you don't have them, very likely it's just because you don't want them. That's why you don't have them. People get married later. That's another thing. So if a couple is getting married at 33, 34, how many kids are they going to have? even if they want them. Less, I would say, fewer children. We can assume. So it's not all
Uh,
down to female empowerment or employment or media messaging. It's not all that, but that is part of it.
I mean, yeah, as far as money goes, it's I mean, obviously we know people who really can't afford to have kids that have
Oh yeah, and that's
multiple
the flip side of it.
kids or
There's people who can't afford to have kids and have tons of kids.
yeah.
And when they probably shouldn't because it's really damaging to their lives. So we don't have, I think, it's not a healthy or sustainable system. And I think if you were to ask, if you're looking at this trend line, which audience can't see, but we can see, all these industrialized nations are going down. They're all just going down. So even though South Korea is the lowest, and it's dire at 0.97, that's where the other countries are headed too. That's where the United States is headed. That's where China's headed.
Isn't it interesting how much higher Israel is?
It is interesting because they're very first world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we should be consulting with Israel about what they're doing. And
Religion?
this is why, yeah, maybe it's religion. Maybe it's because they're strongly religious and they still value traditional family units. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to say for sure because I'm not that familiar with Israel. I only know them politically, not
Hmm.
culturally. So I don't know what it is. They're very, very high at almost 3, which is, replacement level. It's more than replacement level. You have 2 parents, you need 2 kids to replace. What's funny is they have very little land though. So, I
Well,
mean,
what is that? I mean, I think that's if you're a real estate investor.
oh, well, I was thinking it from a different angle. You know how people complain about Israel colonizing the Gaza Strip and things like that? You can get used
Uh-huh.
to that because they're not going to stop. And you can analyze it from all these angles and stuff, politically and whatnot. But you just have to look at this birth rate chart and just see that Israel's going to have more people. They're
Yep.
probably going to want more land. It's that simple sometimes. So I know that this is a problem with a lot of countries, not just South Korea. It is bad for the rest of the world because South Korea produces a lot of good things culturally. Beautiful women, we acknowledge that, right? Produces beautiful women
Yeah.
and music and the arts, quote unquote, the arts,
Produces beautiful women either, by nature or
or
by
by scalpel.
yes.
It doesn't matter. However you get there, I don't care. But I think it's a good thing to talk about because it runs, and Elon Musk has talked about this before. He's talked about population decline as a threat, whereas people who are worried about global warming, people on the left, they seem to just talk about human beings like population growth as a threat, right? These are two totally contrary points of view, where one side feels that, oh, more people, that's a threat, whereas another feels that less people is the real threat. And I know I'm biased here. I usually agree with Elon Musk, but I have to agree with him in that the world is capable of sustaining more people, but I don't know that we are yet equipped to handle not fewer people. It's not fewer people that's the issue. Like if there was just a stable, if there were like there's 7 billion people on the planet right now. If we were just stably at 2 billion, I don't think that's a disaster. I don't think like the alarm bells would be ringing. But it's when we have this sort of sharp population decline, and you have moments where there are so many elderly people who are not productive, and they're depending on a dwindling percentage of young, productive people to power the economy, to power society. That's a very dangerous situation to be in, and that I think is what he's warning us about. It's not just, oh, there's fewer people. No way, we can't possibly survive that. No, of course, it would be fine. We could survive fewer people. But this transition, where there could be a sharp cliff, and it could be devastating to the economy, to a whole bunch of things. I'm not smart enough to know all the unintended consequences of, population declining by half, or suddenly the proportion of old people to young people just goes totally out of whack. I'm sure there's tons of bad unintended consequences to that, and nobody's talking about it because everybody's just on this There's too many people on the planet. Kick this what do you call it? It's called anti-natalism, right? Is that what it's
Hmm.
called?
I don't know. Have you read anything about how South Korea feels about this, or what kind of attempts they might have made to?
Well, they know it's a problem and they're trying to incentivize people to procreate, but it's just not working. It's just not working. And here's the weird thing. Usually I would have attributed this to, oh, women feel empowered and they don't have to, get married and have kids and they reject being a traditional mom. And that's a cause of this sort of thing. But by all accounts, South Korea is a very traditional society. Now, women are quote unquote empowered in that they can work. Nobody is forcing them to get married. So the choice is theirs. But the society, as far as I know, is still pretty conservative and traditional. So they still do place value on these things, as far as I know, and
Hmm.
yet it's not happening. So for South Korea, I think they may be unique in that there are economic pressures at play here, where it's just so hard for people to, like when I said before, how some people have economic reasons why they don't have kids. They just feel like they can't afford them yet. I think maybe that is a big factor in South Korea, where young people, it takes so long for them to get a footing, and then suddenly they're 35 and they get a footing, and it's kind of, for women at least, it's almost too late to have kids, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the main issue there. It's not women rejecting the role of mother. It's more like, oh man, nobody can afford. Nobody can even afford this having children thing. So they push it off and push it off. And unfortunately, you can push it off all you want, but biology has a timeline,
I mean, yeah,
and then it's too late.
if you're gonna get married and have kids, but you can't afford your own place, that would be a big problem, right? I mean,
Yeah. So I think for them, that's the issue. In other countries, I don't think that's the issue so much. But there are a lot of countries, and as more and more countries enter first world status, which ideally will happen, and I think almost inevitably will happen, countries rarely get poorer. Like Venezuela is kind of this weird outlier. Countries rarely get poorer. Most of them enter a more prosperous status. This is going to be a problem for all of them. I know that the the conspiracy theorists would probably say, "Oh, the global elites don't care that we have a population decline. They're just going to import labor from elsewhere." True, you can import labor from India right now, China, Africa, wherever like the birth rate is high still, but realistically, that tap is going to run out too. They're going to enter first world status, and their birth rates are going to decline. And as we've joked before, when the sex robots come, the birth rates are really going to decline. Because when men and women don't feel like they really, really need each other, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. Right now, they do need each other. Like, definitely men need women. They want to have sex, right? And women, most of them still need men or feel like they could benefit from men financially. And they're also attracted to them. But when I say them, I mean, the top 10% or whatever. But hey, that's still something. It's still the top 10% of men getting play. But when there's sex robots, that's none of that's going to happen. Can you imagine? Almost every guy is just going to stay at home with his sex robot, right? And where are the kids going to come from? They've got to come from somewhere. Unless
sperm
we're just going
bank.
to hand this globe, this planet over to the robots, which I guess maybe is fine. Just let them have it. Sperm bank is not a perfect solution either, because women, they may not feel they may not be motivated to have a kid just on their own, not at
Right,
the
but
rates that are
yeah,
needed.
yeah.
You know.